Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the inaugural Devcentral Security Podcast. It is a beautiful Seattle day here, our one in 5 days that we get that actually has sun in here in Seattle. I'm joined on the call today by David Holmes. David Holmes has been doing security in SSL for many a year. David's also a resident geek on web encryption and one of our local security blog masters. Also on the call, Rob Flickenger is a former O'Reilly author and editor, Wi-Fi hacker, and he says aspiring mad scientist. I think he's made the level of mad scientist many a year ago. And finally, we also have Matt Duharte. Matt's kind of known around here as the F5 security curmudgeon, doing everything from reversing to making 8-legged robotic monsters in his bid to take over the world. And myself, I'm Josh Michaels, your DevCentral security host, and we're just going to have some fun today talking about a couple of different things. I want to start it out with, I heard David has been doing a whole bunch of security conferences, and we all know that they're a bunch of fun just to go and learn and have the hallway cons. David, what are some of the conferences that you've been hitting lately?
So I've been to 3 corporate conferences this year. The first one was RSA. RSA this year was super energetic. It was like a madhouse. It was just like a tech frenzy down there. And somebody was telling me it is now the most expensive show in the United States. Did anybody else hear that? Anyway, it was super high. If I were to say anything was big at RSA this year, I'd say it was BYOD, bring your own device. There were literally dozens of startups down there, all young guys on the phone in every bar trying to make a deal with investors. And I ran into several of them. A couple of them at the party that you threw, Josh. I don't remember their names, but I was like, give me the 2-minute pitch. And they had it like down. They would tell you what it was that their BYOD was doing differently to secure applications than everybody else's. So I would say that was the big thing down there. You were there, Josh, too. Did you have that sense?
Yeah, there's definitely the huge burst. I mean, you could tell the difference between last year and this year of all the people entering the market, and the primary focus is being, here's the new push on some of the security, and then the ability to, here's your security for your iPad or your Android device or whatever device the individual want to come to the office with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really high. I was there mostly to talk about our data center firewall, talking to analysts, reporters, and customers. And the biggest problem was getting them to understand the difference between us and the next generation firewalls. And basically, I would end up saying next generation firewalls outbound, data center firewall inbound, without going too much into that. And there was something else about RSA I wanted to bring up too. I can't remember, but if I remember while I'm talking about the next one, I'll come back to it. The next one was InfoSec Europe. I was there to do a panel with Ivan Ristic from SSL Labs. Great guy, totally stand-up, solid dude. And Ryan Hurst, he's the new CTO of GlobalSign. GlobalSign is I want to say the 3rd or 4th largest CA after VeriSign and Trust, and then I forget who number 3 is. So it was basically my position to call out the CA industry on the laxity of their business practices and their security. And to his credit, Ryan from GlobalSign was totally cool about it. He said he wanted to be completely transparent about the problems in the industry and what they were going to do to change it and how they were working on it. So I've been following that industry and what they're doing technologically and the discussions they're having. And if we have time on another show, Josh, maybe we could talk about that, because there's all kinds of, it would be really interesting to talk about what the browsers are doing and what the CAs are doing, and how half the time they're working at cross purposes. But the other half of the time, I think they're making real progress. Before the talk, I wanted to come up with some numbers I could use. So I wrote an SSL crawler to go through the Alexa top 1,000 and check SSL stats. And the main number I was looking for was which of them are running big IPs, because I used to work on our SSL stack, so I can tell when I'm talking to a big IP. And I have the number, but I'm not allowed to say it out loud. But I was able to say that F5 does terminate a significant portion of the world's SSL, so we're going to be involved in the technical discussion on what's being done for public trust, no matter what. You can't implement a solution unless you get F5 on board. Does that make sense? That's sort of
definitely an interesting discussion. I know we're looking to target something for later shows about definitely targeting the SSL and targeting the different topic matters. And we definitely welcome any public comment or questions or concerns or rants or raves, because Lord knows we all have a rant or rave.
Do we want raves? I don't know if we want raves. I get enough raving. One stat I can share is I was surprised at how few sites are doing strict transport security. I only saw 3 out of 500. That's a really small percentage. So we should do that sometime. Maybe we need a checkbox on Big IP for strict transport security. And then the third conference I went to, it's not really a security conference, it's Interop. It's the big networking conference in Vegas. I was in Vegas for a week. That's about 4 days too long, if you know what I mean. But I managed to get through it with only 2 saline drips. So mostly I was there to talk to customers, customers, analysts, and reporters again. The one cool thing I wanted to bring up was there was this guy, this potential customer who came into our booth. He ran an online gaming company in the Far East, and that's just all I'll say about. I don't want people to be able to identify him, but basically they were getting DOSed by who they suspected it was their own government DDoSing them, and they couldn't use the cloud scrubbers. He said they don't have people on the ground who could speak Chinese. I've given up working with them, and he was desperate for a solution. He came in and he said, I will be an F5 customer, I want to be an F5 reseller, and I want to be a partner. Hook me up. And it just so happened that our VP of partner relationships happened to be in the booth at that time. So we hooked them up. And it was just really interesting because that's kind of the whole online gaming thing on the other side of the world is just a massive amount of money floating around it, but a lot of people won't touch it. Some people won't sell to that industry over there. And then the last thing was, I'm going to be in Seattle next week, and I'm going to be scoping crazy projects. Maybe I should talk to Rob, who I think is working on crazy projects out in Seattle. Rob?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Seattle is a fantastic venue for working on stuff you never thought you'd be able to work on. We have an amazing number of hacker spaces in town where people get together to share expertise. They pool resources to buy access to tools, hardware, you name it, stuff that ordinarily you might not be able to afford or fit in your apartment. People will get warehouse space and set it up so folks from all over can come in and work on things. So I'm affiliated with a couple of different groups around town. Mostly I work with HackerBot Labs down in Georgetown. They have an incredible space there. It's a warehouse space. I guess the first thing you notice when you walk into HackerBot Labs is the enormous mill. There's a circa 1992 Fadal mill. It stands about 7 feet on a side. It's the kind of 3-axis mill that, you could manufacture an automobile on this thing, no problem. We have a particular penchant for working on high voltage stuff there. I've built a couple of crazy things over the years. One big one was the quarter shrinker. We have a 400-pound capacitor that takes small coins. Usually you do like a quarter or a penny. You discharge 15 kilojoule through a coil wrapped around it, and you end up with a much smaller coin. It's, like I say, not exactly the kind of thing that you would keep at your apartment.
What is the purpose for making a smaller coin? Is there some sort of hidden benefit that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. People ask if the money is still, if you put a quarter in this machine and it comes out smaller, it's still worth 25 cents. The last time I looked on eBay, they're selling for about $50 a piece because they're so collectible. But I wouldn't say that the motivation is money. The motivation, at least for me, is learning how it is possible to make such things come into existence. The experience that you get working with people building a machine that's incredibly dangerous. You charge this thing up, it's a 300 microfarad capacitor. You charge up to 10 kV. It'll kill you 6 times before you hit the ground if you do it wrong. So just being able to get a team of people together and work out the engineering issues involved, and then to create something that's just wholly unique. Is a really amazing experience. And along the way, you get to know these folks pretty well, and pretty soon you're working on all kinds of things together, learning about stuff you never knew. Like for example, we went in together and bought a 700-pound distribution transformer. We affectionately call it the pole pig. It operates at 8 kilowatts. We power off of a 240-volt high amperage line, single phase, and we use it to make fulgurites. So you can take the output of this huge transformer and sink it in sand. You let it run for about a half hour, 45 minutes. The sand ends up glowing red, white hot. You let it cool for a couple of hours, and when you're all done, you excavate the sand out, and you have the shape of lightning bolts that are actually made out of glass, where the electrical current has formed trees in patterns in the sand. And again, you can ask me what the point of this machine is, and I've already told you what the point is. You're making lightning bolts in glass. It's just, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So anyway, I just wanted to, for folks listening to the podcast, I wanted to encourage you to get out and explore. There are all kinds of hacker spaces in Seattle. I mean, I'll just mention a few. There's Hackabout Labs. I hang out there a lot. There's Metrics up on Capitol Hill. They're more of a commercially oriented, where you can get stuff laser cut, 3D printed. I ended up getting some ceramic manufactured there that became the heart of a Tesla coil that's in the shape of a rifle. So I call it the Tesla gun. And I needed to visit a lot of different hacker spaces around town with different specialties. I went to Metrics and I got the 3D printed ceramic HV switch. I went to another place, Hazard Factory, the metal arts place down in SoDo. Over there, I took a Nerf gun and I cast it in aluminum to make the housing for the gun. Then there's lots of other places. There's Jigsaw Renaissance. There's the Black Lodge on the east side. Like all these places have different specialties. Some people focus on computer security. Some people focus on social networking. Other folks are metal arts. It's great just getting out and seeing what people are capable of here. They're very knowledgeable folks and are willing to share the knowledge. So
definitely it's always interesting seeing the different specialties in each area. I know like Black Lodge Research, which is my hacker space, we focus on a broad spectrum, everything from barbecue to computer security. And it's always entertaining just to show up on a Sunday and see what's going on that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, barbecue, especially now that the weather's so nice, huh?
Oh, definitely.
So, Rob, you mentioned hacker spaces, and I think it's actually part of a bigger phenomenon. I think there's some really amazing stuff going on, and one of the things that come out of, the hacker spaces and the open source movement, especially, I think, for me, is the microelectronics that we're seeing. I mean, everybody knows the Arduino and all that, but you're also seeing a lot of people who are looking at, hacking the routers and all that. And what I just got recently, I'm really quite fond of it. It's called the Mini Pwner. And what it is it's, probably about a 2x2 by maybe 3/4 inch thick little slab of plastic based off a TP-Link WR703N router. Literally, this thing powers off USB. It has a little Ethernet port on it you could plug in, but it also does Wi-Fi. And what's cool about these things is that on minipwner.com, he'll sell you one, but he'll also tell you how to do it. You wipe it, you put WRT on it, and comes with a bunch of hacking tools. And these things are really pretty amazing little, drop boxes that you can use for pen testing and not so legal things, I would imagine. But I think they're pretty amazing in just the size and the miniaturization they got. And the fact that, that movement has created people who are writing the software to do this and work it out. I mean, this isn't a new concept. Hack5's had their Wi-Fi Pineapple out for a while. And there's a couple of people who commercialized this kind of tiny little, hacker boxes. The Pony Express is the one I think of. And that one's pretty amazing because it does 3G as well as the wireless. And you can it looks like a wall wart. You just plug it in the wall, And from a security perspective, these tools are pretty cool too, because you can have it like, say, go in there, don't turn your, tell it not to turn its Wi-Fi on for a while. Get past, the IT department who's looking for rogue access points and just activate itself. Later on, turn itself on, sniff around a little bit, shut itself down. Makes it very hard to find. And with something like the Pony Express, where you could, contact it via 3G, that's just a phone call, a little data, right? Who's going to spot that in an office? You're able to, maybe turn on your wireless, turn it off. Makes these things much harder to find and pretty amazing little boxes. And I think you're seeing a massive movement with the microcontrollers coming out of the hacker spaces between the Raspberry Pis and all that. But from a strictly security point of view, I don't know, I almost find the mini Pwner a little scary. You could just go in for like an interview or something and then drop this thing under the desk when the guy's not looking, and the next thing you know, you've got access to their wireless LAN. And even if they use the new fancy wallpaper that blocks wireless, well, they're inside. It's like all those bad sci-fi novels and whatever, I paid the janitor to shove this in. Well, these things are so tiny, and probably the part that gets me the most is something like the Pony Express. That's a really professional tool, and you're talking, the wireless version, $600. The one with 3G is $800. The Hack 5 Wi-Fi Pineapple, which is really good for men, and the middle stuff is, about $90. And the mini Pwner, you can buy a kit, but the basic router this is based on is only $20, $25. So at that rate, you could, litter a company with these things, and that, I guess I find that a little scary myself. But a lot of this, really interesting reuse of these embedded equipment is coming out of those hacker spaces, and really the creativity that you're seeing coming out with the electronics and the lightning stuff that you do with your Tesla coils. It always fascinates me. I think it's pretty amazing. But I find the mini Pwner just a little scary too, in addition to being pretty darn cool, running off a battery and just being able to, Nmap from the inside, do your Yassiger from the inside, so you take over the captive portals, all the really interesting stuff that hackers like to do. So.
Well, and looking at the mini Pwner, it actually reminds me of some of the other devices that you see that keep getting smaller and smaller. Even getting away from the security industry, you go into the entertainment industry and look at things like the Roku box, which are just a very tiny, fully integrated entertainment system.
Look at the new Apple iTV. I saw one of those the other day, and I was shocked at how much smaller it's gotten since the last time I looked at one.
Exactly. You can carry your full entertainment system anywhere anywhere that you have a network connection. So it's been interesting to see, and I same with you, Matt. I'm scared to see what's next, but I'm also really excited.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Hey, Matt. If the mini Pwner is using like a 3G connection, doesn't there have to be an associated account with AT&T or whoever? Wouldn't you be able to tell who would put that there by who's paying for that account?
The mini Pwner is wireless and wired. The Pony Express you can get with 3G, but you can just supply your own SIM, so you just go get a burner SIM. Go buy a prepaid cell phone, grab out the burner SIM from it, shove it in, and you're ready to go. So it's not that hard to get an anonymous SIM according to my law enforcement types that I know.
Yeah, sure. Prepaid would be the
way
to go.
But that is a way to trace it back. Obviously, you could go to the manufacturer and see who bought, this puppy based on its MAC address. And that's fine if you physically find it, but, in Linux, it's easy to just change the effective MAC address that's out there. And a small device like this could be very hard to find. I remember a while back some colleagues of mine hid an Annoyatron in my cube, and it took me easily a quarter to find it. The thing just chirped regularly and never could quite find that thing. So these tiny little boxes, I think you could litter them all over the place with their battery packs, and they'd be real hard to find, especially if they don't keep the wireless or the phone on all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
So you get yourself a Pony Express, tell it to call you at 1 o'clock in the morning every night, and don't turn its wireless on until instructed. You'd have a pretty hard to find little box, because all it would be doing was making a phone call outbound. and it wouldn't even be registered with the cell towers. You could set it up to not do that.
Right.
Now we're getting into the spy stuff.
I was in Australia earlier this year talking with a telco down there, and they had some guy had built a whole business where he was selling security cameras that were really just smartphones, and you could log it because their network allows you to log, and a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of times you can send a TCP connection all the way through the network to the cell phone. That was how he was enabling his customers to basically view their surveillance cameras, and I'm using quotes there. He was just using smartphones. And so they were talking about, like, well, should they permit it or not? But their business people were like, hey, we're selling the service already. So that might be another interesting way to do it.
Now, it's definitely a cool piece of tech. That's what keeps me excited about the industry is, the ever-advancing tech and strategies and tactics. It's always fun to show up at DEF CON or show up at any of the cons and see the newest and greatest and shiniest thing out there.
Well, like I said, though, a lot of this stuff is really not necessarily new tech and new approaches, but what the hacker spaces and the security researchers have done is shrink it down and really lower the barrier to entry for these things to make it run on the lower cost hardware, make it simpler to do. And that's the real challenge. I mean, before, to do something like this, you would have to have been a nation state, 20 years ago. Now, like I said, it's a $20 little router and a little bit of time to install the software on it, and presto, bango, changeo, you've got, a little pen testing in a box.
Or you give it to Rob and his penny shrinker, and he might pull to it for you too. I'm not sure function after that.
Yeah, shrink it down, no problem.
Yeah, shrink it down. Keep shrinking it.
I think China's doing a damn fine job of shrinking it down at the moment. Can't keep up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do want to thank David, Matt, and Rob for joining me today. Let you guys out there know if you have any questions, hit us up via Devcentral or at any of our Twitter feeds. You'll find those in the podcast information section. Look for future podcasts on the second Monday of every month. And everybody out there, make sure you stay safe, stay secure, and hack something.